Hey, folks, you're watching Medical More Podcast, and on today's podcast, we would be talking to a very eminent entrepreneur whose startup Cloudphysician deals with providing advanced clinical decision making to the ICU units through their advanced AI and ML platforms. So, let's get to know more about them and let's talk to the CEO himself. Hi, Dr. Dhruv. Welcome to Medical More Podcast, and thank you so much for taking time out and being on the podcast today with us. Uh, but before we get into talking what Cloud Physician is and how Tele ICU is a very interesting thing by itself, it's a very good sector, it's a very interesting sector. So let's talk about that a little later. But first, I would like to take you back a little bit, probably in your med school, okay? And I would really be interested to know why exactly did you choose to be an intensivist as your career, because that has even carried out in your startup DNA. So something about that.
Yeah, no, thanks, Gagan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir.
Happy to be here speaking to you and have this platform to speak to all the folks that this podcast goes out to. So, as my professional apprenticeship and career progressed, I moved from MBBS, completed my MBBS from St. John's, moved to the United States, did my residency in internal medicine, and again at that time, it was clear to me that. I wanted to go into, like I said, the field of pulmonary medicine was very intriguing to me. But also at that point in time, just getting more exposure to the ICU and getting more exposure to critical care. The interplay between pulmonary and critical care was pretty clear. I mean,
Right.
uh, you know, uh, there's ventilators, etc., etc. There are many roles of sort of overlap between the two fields,
Okay.
and also just dealing with disease at its you know at its extreme, which is what happens in an ICU, be it renal failure or cardiac failure or pulmonary
Right.
failure, logical failure, or liver failure for that matter, or hematological complications that would get a person into the ICU. Just seemed a lot. Uh, it seemed very exciting at that point of time. It seemed to
Okay.
I seemed to naturally gravitate towards it. Uh, Thoroughly enjoyed my time in the ICU during apprenticeship. I also had good mentors at that time, so that certainly
Right.
helped. And so it was a combination of all of these that made my choice of super specialization, which was pulmonary and critical care, a sort of a natural consequence. And so then subsequently, post my internal medicine residency, I went
Okay.
in and did my fellowship in pulmonary and critical care, and eventually uh, am today a pulmonologist and an intensivist.
So, okay, now I think this 90% of our podcast listeners probably are only tuned in just to listen to this one. What's the story behind Cloud Physician? How did it all start?
Yeah. So my co-founder, Dilip
Yeah.
Raman, he's also an intensivist and a pulmonologist, and we were
Right.
colleagues. We met while we were both in the US. So his background
Mm.
is similar to mine in that he also did his MBBS in India, uh,
Okay.
not at the same medical school. Then he moved to the United States, did his uh,
Okay.
further education in internal medicine, and then did his fellowship in pulmonary and critical care. And both of us were colleagues
Mm.
at the Cleveland Clinic. That's where we first met.
Oh, okay.
Our experience there was great, right? I mean, it's one of the
Mm.
best centers in the world, and you're sort of exposed to all facets of high-end healthcare delivery
Mm.
at the Cleveland Clinic. So that experience was phenomenal. But at the end of that, as we were deciding on what would be the next path, of our careers,
Okay.
the one option would be to sort of take the conventional path where you complete your education, then you become a practicing doctor, and you further hone your skills
Right.
and provide care to patients. And that the options were plenty at that point in time. In
Mm-hmm.
the United States, we could have stayed back there and been doctors there. But I think one of the things that was common to both Dilip and I was that, we wanted to sort of problem solve at a slightly large, or maybe not slightly, but we wanted to problem solve at a larger scale. you know we had experienced healthcare delivery both in India and in the United States. We had seen the healthcare delivery problems that exist in ICUs
Okay.
both in India and the United States. Lots of places where improvements could be made, again, in both those places. One theme that was common was that technology can be a huge enabler to help
Right.
make some of these changes, and that was apparent. And so we used it in different, in many different facets while we were in the United States. Basic facet would be just having an EMR, then to sort of more advanced in terms of
Right.
remote monitoring and then remote care and remote management. So
Mm-hmm.
we had that experience, and it was pretty clear to both Dilip and I that that is going to be the future of healthcare delivery, because the
Of
conventional
course.
models of healthcare delivery that we have do not service the needs of our entire population.
Right.
I mean, the often quoted problems of healthcare delivery, which are access, quality, and cost effectiveness, have not been solved using conventional modes of healthcare delivery. And so we're in the technology age, and it was pretty clear to us that we've got to find solutions that would leverage technology to solve some of these problems and solve them at a larger scale, at a greater
Mm-hmm.
scale. The opportunity of sort of coming back to India to build something from scratch, and if it were successful, have the opportunity to solve some of these healthcare delivery problems at scale, was very appealing to us. It just seemed like it was the right thing to do.
Right.
um, and of course, it is fraught with risk, not an easy decision to make,
Mm-hmm.
but one that we were quite convinced was right for us at that time in our career. So we both moved back with the intention of solving these healthcare delivery problems that exist. And while
Mm-hmm.
they existed in the Western world, they existed in India at a far greater scale. And so, if we were able to solve them, the impact that we would be able to have would also be far greater. So we spent some time,
Right.
spent many months, traveling the country, understanding, visiting ICUs in different settings, in urban
Mm-hmm.
settings, in corporate settings, in tier two, tier three, small, medium-sized corporate hospitals, etc., just to understand the healthcare delivery problems, the different stakeholders that exist in these settings. And then eventually, once we thought that, okay, we've got a good handle on how things are, and what are the things that are broken, we have an idea on what we can do to fix some of these things. So
Right.
let's just get started. You can't sort of have the perfect solution and on
Correct.
day one, but you just need to get started somewhere. And so
Of
then we were like,
course.
okay, let's just get started. We know enough to get started now. Once we start, we'll keep learning more and keep figuring things out, and keep you know changing the solution
Right.
to meet the need that needs to be addressed. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how Cloud Physician started. So it started with just the two of us, uh, you
Okay.
know uh, doing a pilot at a hospital. We managed to convince the management of that hospital that, hey, why don't you just let us remotely manage some of your ICU patients. And that pilot was successful, and then eventually became a client. And around the same time, we were like,
Okay.
okay, let's formally start this company, Cloud Physician. This was sometime around 2017, and then of course we've
Yeah.
continued to progress from there.
So you were talking about piloting a patient from the ICU, right? I mean, that's what Cloudphysician does with the Tele ICU concept. I want to know about your radar platform. Yeah, is something about what it constitutes of, what are those elements in it, and how does it actually work?
So I think there were two issues here, right? Like I was telling you,
Right.
one is that you don't have these specialist doctors at all the hospitals that you need them to. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to get specialist doctors wherever they are and be able to connect them to where
Right.
the patient is. And now that connection needs to happen in some format, right? And that format is basically technology.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Now, it is not merely enough to just connect the two, but it is really important that that connection is seamless, and the connection is able to facilitate the interaction from one end to the other end in a completely seamless manner and ensure that the expertise that is at one end can actually be delivered at the other end, right? So there are many components to, and that is it was clear to us that it needed a unique technology platform to solve this problem, because the way that we wanted any platform to behave did not exist, and so we had to create it from scratch again. So
Right.
that's again how Radar was created. The intention was to build, and the intention is and continues to be, build a smart platform that will allow
Mm-hmm.
doctors who may not be present physically at the bedside of patients to be able to uh, oversee the care of patients remotely, and at
Right.
the same time improve the efficiency and productivity of doctors, at the same time improve the quality of care that can be delivered, and very, very importantly, to improve the experience of all the caregivers that would be using the platform, right? So whether it's a nurse at the bedside or the doctor remotely, it's really important that when you introduce this technology piece, that you keep their experience front and center for it to be successful. Because if you are going to negatively impact the experience of the users, your platform is going to have a really hard time in being adopted. So these were sort of this was the thought that we had,
Right.
and it was also we also realized that we need to automate the ICU as pervasively as possible, right? So as much of sort of digitalization that can take place
Mm-hmm.
is going to help us build more, improve the experience, improve the outcomes, and improve the quality and improve the productivity as well. So Radar has many components that uh, basically does all of these things. So while
Okay.
it has a video component of being able to see a patient, it has a communication
Mm-hmm.
component by which it's able to communicate with the bedside doctors and connect them to clinicians
Yeah.
in the context of a particular patient. It also is able to collect all of the patient data, data from monitors, data from ventilators. It's easy to use for nurses to be able to write and type in notes and
Yeah.
put any data as well. Many smart many smart modules that help automate some of the documentation that nurses and doctors have to do. Many smart modules that help automate the conversion of textual data into digital data. Many smart modules that convert video data into digital data, and of course, analytics on all of this data that would
Right.
give clinicians
Mm-hmm.
insightful, everything from alarms to suggestions to recommendations to protocols that may be relevant to patients. Uh,
Right.
so there are so many components. I sort of listed out, give you like a big picture view highlights of some of
Sure.
radar
Sure. Sure.
components, but it is all of this functioning smoothly that would allow for the stated objectives, which is improve the get access
Mm-hmm.
for the patient, improve the quality, improve the productivity, and improve the experience of all the providers.
Right. So, correct me if I'm wrong. Um, actually, Cloud Physician actually got a patent approved last week, if I'm not wrong. It was on the system and method for determining patient health indicators using ML. So that's something really cool about Cloud Physician. These guys are actually taking tech into the sector, probably even revolutionizing it. But again, so coming back, I want to know something about what are those parameters that you look at when you merge or you partner up with an ICU unit hospital? What are those few parameters that you look at?
The intention of building our technology and building our service provision was to be able to help a large variety of hospitals in a
Mm-hmm.
large variety of settings. Because one of
Right.
the things that you will notice when you look at the healthcare landscape, everywhere, but even and in India as well, is that all hospitals are very heterogeneous, right? So there's no homogeneity. Some of them may
Right.
have some specialist doctors, some of them may have some well-trained nurses, some of them may have some ancillary facilities, some of them may have some technology, not all of it. It's very sort of heterogeneous. Some of them may have integratable devices, some may not. And so the intention was that, hey, let's not make a solution that let's make a solution that can cater to a large variety of settings, of healthcare
Right.
settings. So that's what we look at. But I'll tell you specifically, in terms of the hospitals, even though we want to be able to help everybody, there are certain characteristics of hospitals that make them that would find what we provide most useful, right? So those would be hospitals that have ICU facilities. So they have the physical infrastructure of ICUs. So they've already invested in ventilators and a monitor. They have a lab, 24 hours pharmacy. They have some super specialty backup surgery if needed, but they don't have intensivists available 24/7,
Right.
right? So there's a
Yeah.
and that's a very, very large number of hospitals. Most hospitals, especially small to medium size, between 50 beds to 150 beds would fall into that category. So that's one segment of hospitals that would find immediate use for what we are able to provide, the technology as well as the services of our intensivists. The other sector of hospitals are larger corporate hospitals or enterprise hospitals
Right.
that have specialist doctors available, but they want to optimize the utilization of their specialist doctors to be able to manage all of their ICU beds wherever they may be located. And so those hospitals will look to simply use our technology platform for their own doctors to be able to use within their own hospital. So those are the two types of hospitals
Right.
that
I get that.
reach out to us.
How do you measure your patient outcomes? The care delivery and and your patient care outcomes. How do you measure that? Do you have an algorithm or something that gives you a continuous feedback on this data, or is it that the hospitals do this and then they send you the data and then you guys improvise on it? How is it so?
No, one of the
Okay.
functions of radar is certainly
Okay.
to
Okay.
aggregate all of the patient data. And so
Okay.
once we have the data available with us, we are able to measure what the outcomes of those patients were, right? So we have different quality metrics that we look at,
Right.
compliance with standard protocols,
Right.
mortality rates, length of stays, readmissions. These are all sort of standard metrics
Okay.
that we use to
Okay.
see what are
Okay.
the outcomes of patients, and
Okay.
how are the outcomes getting better, are they staying the same, are they getting worse, what are the changes that need to be made. So this data of course is available on radar, and is what we use, and in fact we
Okay.
share
Okay.
this data with the hospitals, right? So
Okay.
we share these outcome parameters with hospitals, saying that, hey, you know what, this ICU, this is the trends that we're seeing. These are the improvements that need to be made. This is what we need to do right now. So that's one way in which we track outcomes. Of course, we are looking to build in more real-time tracking methods as well. So to give you a sense, one of the
Okay.
things that we're working on is building a
Okay. Right.
deterioration index. So for
Right.
us to be able to utilize the data that we have on radar, to be able to predict that a certain patient may deteriorate in a certain amount of time, and thereby we can sort of proactively,
Yeah.
instead of waiting
Yeah.
for deterioration to take place, perhaps proactively intervene and prevent a deterioration from taking place. So these are some of the, I would say, cool things that we're working on with our data.
Being first generation entrepreneurs, right, at Cloud Physician, you yourself and Dr. Dilip Raman, um, how did you guys go about the funding? Because most startups are either bootstrapped and then once they have good valuations, they go to VCs. But many say VCs are bad, but still they go to VCs and they come back. So how did it work out for Cloud Physician?
So
Okay.
we were bootstrapped. So Dilip and I
Uh-huh.
are both,
Right.
US trained and licensed
Right.
physicians. And
Yeah.
so Dilip and I, in our personal capacities, used to
Mm-hmm.
consult with US
Okay.
hospitals remotely from
Mm-hmm.
Bangalore. And
Okay.
that gave us the funds that we needed to sort of invest into Cloud Physician and bootstrap Cloud Physician over the last 4 years. So that's how we started. We are at a point or time right now where we're looking now. We're already in about 14 states in the country. We have a fairly
Yeah.
large number of hospital clients. Still early
Yeah.
days in Cloud Physician's journey, but as we're looking to grow our next phase of growth, we will uh, bring in
Right.
outside investors that would help
Right.
provide the
Right.
capital to fuel that
Right.
additional growth.
How does Cloud Physician's scalability look like to to yourself as being the co-founder? Where do you see Cloud Physician in the next 10 years? How do you see Cloud Physician bringing out those really cool tech platforms which you were just talking about and very previously? How do you see all this working out for Cloud Physician, basically?
One of the things that we want to do is we want to sort of be uh, guided by um, guided by
Right.
the goals which are set in terms
Right.
of ensuring that patients get better care, hospitals can manage their
Right.
patients better, right? Now that
Right.
is the goal. If to do that we need to build cool
Right.
technology, then we will do that, right?
Right.
But the goal is not to build a cool technology. The goal is to help improve patient care, help hospitals manage their patients better. And like I was saying, whatever we need to do to achieve that goal is what we will do. And it seems like
Mhm.
technology will be a large part of what we do to achieve that goal. So your question regarding the scale, Cloud Physician's
Okay.
ambitions are global.
Okay.
The problem statement that we're solving is not limited to any particular region or any particular part of India or
Right.
any other country as well.
Right.
It is a problem statement that is present world over. So you talked about 5 to 10 years. In 5 to 10 years, we hope to for Cloud Physician to be a global organization solving healthcare delivery problems in hospitals across the world.
So how is COVID playing out for Cloud Physician? Do you guys see your services going up, your revenues increasing because of that, or are you seeing that the business is not really that great at this part of time? How are you seeing that? Because you guys are after all outsourcing the ICU piloting, right? So how is this working out for you, sir?
So I
Okay, I'm
think
so sorry. I'm
I
so
call me
sorry.
Dhruv Gagan
Okay,
again.
I'm so sorry.
Uh,
I'm so sorry.
that's fine. I think COVID, one of the things that COVID has done has been that it has brought about an enormous amount of awareness in people on solution
Mm-hmm.
about solutions like ours.
Mm-hmm.
It has brought about awareness that number one, that
Mm-hmm.
healthcare delivery had major
Right.
challenges even before COVID.
Right.
With the onset of COVID, those challenges were highlighted, and unfortunately,
Yeah.
lots of people lost their lives
Yeah.
yeah, due to some of those challenges. And people have realized that these are fundamental flaws in the healthcare delivery system that need to be improved, that need to be fixed, and that technology can be an immense enabler in helping
Yeah.
fix some of these problems. So, from
Yeah.
that standpoint, Cloud Physician has benefited in that just in terms of awareness. Um what we're doing is fairly
Right.
unique, is
Right.
still not mainstream, is still a fringe idea, and I think COVID has certainly helped move that along its journey of moving from fringe to mainstream. Still, I would not say it's mainstream by any stretch, but it has certainly moved that needle for Cloud Physician.
Since COVID had hit almost most of the sectors and most businesses up very bad. well, talking especially about the healthcare or the medical industry coming. Do you think there would be a better budget or maybe some better policies done by the government in order to boost or stimulate the growth of of hospital sectors? Upgrade the hospitals. Give them better infrastructure. Do you see something like that happening?
I would be surprised if there
Right.
wasn't a movement in that direction. I
Right.
think this has been an eye opener for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Some folks like me who are in this field are
Right,
obviously
sir.
aware of the problems, but I think
Right, sir.
in the past year and a half, everybody, whether they're in this field or not, have
Right.
been exposed to the problems that exist, and
Right.
including the government. I think the government has also realized that there are big problems here, and certainly I would think again, I would think
Mm-hmm.
that there would be steps to move in the
Mm-hmm.
direction of boosting healthcare
Right.
infrastructure, adoption of technology,
Right.
boosting our healthcare workforce, supporting them in many
Right.
ways. They need support, everything from
Right.
upskilling, training to so there are many. I think there are many things that can be improved in healthcare delivery, and I'm sure
Right.
the powers that be will be taking
Right.
steps to
So,
move
so
in that
as an
direction.
entrepreneur, you've probably gone through a lot of struggles in the initial days of Cloud Physician. What would you suggest that one trait or that one skill set that everybody in this sector, healthcare and medical industry should have? They can be a startup who's actually doing this, a B2B business or a B2C. Yeah.
Okay, in the healthcare sector, I think there are perhaps many common uh, characteristics that entrepreneurship takes. Of course, there is
Right.
a risk associated with it.
Right.
Um, I I would say if I had to again just your question, you mentioned that we had
Right.
hard days. We still have hard days.
Right.
We still in our
Mm-hmm.
as we're evolving as a company, we've
Mm-hmm.
certainly come a long way. But
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur, I think the hard
Right.
days don't go away that soon.
Right.
So there are still ups and downs that you need to navigate. But in terms of your question about what is the one characteristic, I think there are a few people that have said this. There is an ex-entrepreneur. His name is Guy Kawasaki. There's another venture capitalist by the name of John Doerr
Mm-hmm.
who talk about you need to be
Right.
able to make meaning, right?
Right.
So, you need to be able to make meaning in what you're doing, and so in as you do that, uh, what you're trying to do when you're making meaning is that you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
make the world a better place. You're
Mm-hmm.
trying to fix something that is wrong.
Right.
You make it right.
Right.
Solve a problem. Um, and in doing that, there are certain characteristics that you need to have. You need to have a thick skin. You need to be able to sort of, you know, uh,
Right.
take the ups and downs,
Right.
work long hours
Right.
with low pay if
Right.
you're an entrepreneur. So these are many characteristics, but I would say that as you're uh, if anyone is taking the step into entrepreneurship, one of the questions that they should ask themselves is, how am I
Right.
making meaning here, right?
Right.
So what am I doing that will help, make the world better, or
Right.
make your area better, or make your
Right.
community better, or make your city better? Um how am I solving a particular problem, something that's wrong? How am I fixing it? How am I improving, the
Right.
the quality of life of
Right.
that people have? I think these are the questions that you need to answer, and if you have the answer to these questions, it becomes much easier to navigate the ups and downs and the hardships and the low pay and the long hours that you're no doubt going to experience.
What you spoke was very true. I think many of us listening to this podcast would actually feel the same. Very insightful, especially when you maintain that you always should have a clear vision before you really step into it. And also, what Cloudphysician has done before entering the Indian market, you guys have actually studied the intensive care unit inside and out. You understood what defaults, how you could make it better, how you could exceptionally make it a great outcome business in a very human level, right? Uh, so thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. But I would like to end this with just one last question. Probably you might be getting this very frequently too. How profitable is a business in this industry?
Our goal, at least in the near term,
Right.
is not is to grow the business and not necessarily to be profitable.
Right.
That having been said, to grow the business in a healthy
Right.
way. So from a so as a company is sort of growing, and as we're trying to scale, there are lots of investments that you need to make into the organization to allow it to grow. And I think that we're in that phase of the organization. Uh, I would say that the business construct is profitable uh, because what we are doing is that we are leveraging technology to help one doctor who is remotely located take care of a larger number of patients than they ordinarily would have had they been physically at the bedside, right? And so that's what allows us to be cost effective and yet profitable at the same time. So from that standpoint, we are profitable, but from that standpoint, the business is profitable. But in sense of what exactly profit loss of the business at this point in time, I think right now our focus is more to make investments to grow the business. And so if that means not being profitable in the short term, we're okay with that.
Cloudphysician is basically positioning themselves for a better future, right? That's what you guys are trying to do. I think that's another business lesson right there. But okay, thank you so much, sir, for being on the podcast with us today, and we've really learned a lot about this. I mean, Tele ICU is something that we did not even know that it could be scaled into this level, and exceptionally admirable when Cloudphysician is using the right tech to do this, right? Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and we'll see you again, sir. Thank you so much.
Happy to be here, and pleasure speaking to you this afternoon.